Today, why superannuation fees are such a big deal. Hello again, I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. In my program the other day, I argued that for many households, a few basic steps are all the financial planning they probably need. See, fixing the banking system, the property imperative weekly to the 5th of May. I got quite a reaction, including some who suggested things were more complex. So today I wanted to highlight two issues relating to superannuation. First, the fund you choose does matter. And second, the fees you are charged matters even more. The third area of asset allocation we'll leave to a future edition. To put this into perspective, there are more than 28 million superannuation accounts in the country and well over 12 million Australians employed, according to government statistics. They are forced to save into a super fund. Because of this, the value of Australian retirement assets total more than 2.3 trillion, the fourth largest such savings pool in the world. And this includes more than 600,000 self-managed super funds controlling more than $700 billion in assets. But during the last 10 years, Australians have paid around $230 billion in fees to superannuation funds, and over the next 10 years, these fees are set to double. According to researchers Rainmaker in 2016, Australians paid $31 billion in fees on the $2.3 trillion of superannuation. And for comparison, that amount of fees is about the same as the cost to the government of superannuation tax concessions and more than half the $45 billion spent on income support for the elderly. So this works out at more than $1,000 for every pension account each year, or more than $2,500 for every employed Australian. Of that $31 billion in fees, the for-profit sector, which includes self-managed super funds, ends up with $28 billion or 91%. But worse, retail super funds are soaking up half of all fees in the superannuation system despite holding only 29% of retirement savings. Retail includes the big four banks, who last year grabbed some 28% of all fees, totaling $8.7 billion. The not-for-profit funds charge less and generally also perform better. These retail funds have significantly underperformed not-for-profit funds over the last 10 years as well, delivering returns of 2% less per annum when compared to industry super funds over the 10 years. For an average income earner, this underperformance, if continued, could cost $200,000 in retirement savings over their lifetime. Now, ASIC last year made significant changes to the way superannuation and managed investment funds disclose the fees and charges that affect customers, and said that these fees would be easier to understand. The new requirement follows ASIC's identifying a significant amount of under-reporting of fees, as well as considerable inconsistency in the way fees and charges are listed by funds. ASIC found this made it very difficult for consumers to understand how much they were paying and what they were paying for, and to compare funds. Their changes will help bring industry-wide consistency to exactly what must be included in the product disclosure statements, the PDSs. And from later in 2018, the changes will also ensure that the information in PDS and periodic statements will match more clearly. As a result, they say, consumers will be better able to understand the fees and costs. The consistency and more accurate disclosure of fees will also help ensure that funds are competing more fairly. ASIC also noted that the fees consumers are being charged may reflect the type of investment, with some higher cost investments also bringing higher returns in the long term. This change to reporting will also make it easier for consumers to identify when this may be the case. But ASIC said, following extensive consultation with the industry on the introduction of these charges, they agreed to extend the deadline for disclosure of some operating costs in the investment fee or direct costs to the 30th September 2018. This extension on this component will help to provide additional time for discussions between ASIC and industry about how to calculate these fees. And ASIC also extended the deadline for certain disclosures in periodic statements that require changes to the internal systems of funds. They say this is to ensure that the change can be made in a cost-effective manner. These requirements will have effect for annual statements for the year ending the 30th of June 2018. So this remains work in progress, but it's very important, not least because there is a long list of fees which may be taken from a member's account through the life of a fund. ASIC, at its MoneySmart site, lists more than 10 fees which may be charged either as a percentage of the fund or by way of a fixed amount. And these include members' fees, which are general administration fees to cover the cost of keeping your super account, management or investment management fees, also known as MER, fees for managing your investments, which can vary for different investment options, contribution fees, which are fees to cover the administration expense of receiving and investing your contributions, advisor service fees, which are fees paid for personal advice provided about your super and other investments. Your advisor may also receive commissions for certain investments that they recommend to you. Insurance premiums, the cost of insurance provided through your super fund, and many super funds have a set default insurance option. You can usually choose to lower or increase your level of cover based on your needs. Establishment fees, an administration charge for setting up your account in the fund. Withdrawal or termination fees. You may be charged fees when you take money out of your super fund account, for example, when you retire or when you roll over to a different fund. Investment switching fees, fees for changing investment options within your super account. Contribution splitting fees, charged when you split off some of your contributions to your spouse's super account. And performance fees, additional fees that may be payable if your investments perform better than the market benchmarks. Issuer fees, fees charged by the investment issuer for overseeing the fund. And expense recovery fees, which are out-of-pocket expenses your trustee is entitled to recover from your super account. Family law split fees, fees charged to split your super following a separation and family law court order. Now, the Murray Financial System Inquiry in 2014 found there is not strong competition based on fees in the superannuation sector, and it recommended a competitive mechanism or tender to select default products, unless a review held by 2020 shows the sector has become much more efficient. The application of fees has a profound impact on the overall return from the fund to a member, especially any fees which are applied to the balance of the fund. To illustrate this, we've modelled a set of scenarios to examine the impact of these fees. We will make a series of assumptions to assist the analysis. Let's assume a new investor starts by making a $1,000 investment in the first year, age 25, and increases contributions by 2% for each subsequent year. Let's assume that the fund grows at 8% each year and that fees are 1% each year on the balance of the fund. In this scenario, by age 71, which is 40 years in the fund, the value would be $425,000. Now, I've ignored tax issues in this analysis to simplify things. The red line in this chart shows the contributions, the yellow line shows the fees, and the blue bars the net fund value each year. But now let's change the fees charged to 2.5%. In this scenario, the fund will only be worth $253,000 if other parameters stay the same. It's a massive drop in value. And in fact, we can run a series of scenarios to illustrate just how volatile the returns are as fees change. With no fees, the portfolio will be worth nearly $600,000. As fees rise, the values fall significantly. The reason for the changes in outcomes is explained by the compounding effect in the fund. Looking at the 2.25% scenario, in the first year, the fund takes 2.25% from the $1,000 contribution. In the second year, it takes another 2.25% from that initial contribution, plus from any additional ones made and from growth in the fund. And this continues for the life of the investment. In fact, there will be a crossover point where any new contributions to the fund will be completely wiped out by fees. We modelled this for our scenario with fees at 1.5%. Any contribution over 55 years old will be eaten up in fees. The larger the fund, the greater the fees. The higher the growth, the greater the fees. The higher the fees, the smaller the overall return. It's simple mathematics. So we can begin to see why self-managed superannuation is so attractive, as you can avoid most of the fees and retain control of the investments, especially as balances grow. And it's not just in Australia that attention is being drawn to the fees on superannuation. In the UK, the government there announced that it would move towards legally capping fees at 0.75% or 1%, and is in the middle of discussions with industry as to the correct level, seeking to end what the pension minister called excessive fees. So fees are a big deal. So I'm going to leave you with a question. Do you know how much you're paying in your fund? If you like what you've seen here today, please like the post and add a comment or a question. I do read them all. And if you want to join the growing band of subscribers who receive alerts when we release new posts, do subscribe now. And if you've already subscribed, thank you very much. I do appreciate your support and your contribution. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.